Hello everyone, welcome to the React development tutorial. This tutorial is kind of like delicious, at least from the name. We will talk about Hamburger menu, and what we'll learn here, we'll learn how to add a CSS only Hamburger menu to our app. It doesn't use any kind of JavaScript for the logic, it's just pure CSS and HTML. So that's the cool feature of it, and we'll talk about why we should be careful about adding new libraries to our applications. And we will talk about the pros and cons of adding a new library inside of our application. So let's do that. Here's the final product that you can create after this tutorial. So we'll have two pages, and there is a menu right here. This is the hamburger menu. And so let me click, and as you can see there's some visual effect like animations when you hover over, and when you click on it, it will show the menu that you have here, and when you close it, it goes back and then come back. So now this is one type of menu that we will learn. The other type is in an about page. So this is the second page that I was talking about, and when you go and click on it, this is the other type of hamburger menu. So let's create it. And we want to build an app. We have multiple options for adding features in our applications. And for example, for this kind of menu, if you search online, you will find thousands of source code that you can just add it to your source code and make it working. And most of them are kind of like a library, like packages. You can do npm install and that package, and it will be available in your project and you can easily use it. But we should be careful about adding new libraries in our applications for multiple reasons. The very first concern is that that library should be maintained and should be supported by the community. Otherwise, after a while, maybe a year or two, the developers stop supporting. And for example, if you update your React package, and if that library no longer will work, and you have to redo all of the stuff that you've done. So it's highly recommended. Consider researching and see how many people are using that library and if it's necessary to add it or not. And take this step, do your due diligence, and then add that library to your project. And one of the reasons that we add libraries is that we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So if you see that the library is very complicated and the feature that you want to add is so complicated, yes, go ahead and find the best one, and find the one that has highly supported by community. And the way that you know that it's supported by community, you go to that GitHub project and see how many people are for it, how many people are supporting, and what was the latest update for that files, and these kind of things that you can check to add that to your project. And the other reason for not adding the new libraries to your project is the size. So at the initial load of your application, or the time that that library gets into the picture, it takes time for the browser to download it and start using it. So if you have it available in your application, it will be faster. And if you can develop it inside of your application, for sure it will be so much faster. But again, it has some pros and cons. The pros is that you can just plug it in, you don't have to reinvent the wheel and then use it easily. But the cons is that they might not support it later, and you will get into the situation that you have to refactor the code, and it will be a disaster. So for us, I try to keep it simple, because I know that hamburger menu is something that many of the application might need it. So that's why I selected this subject. And I think with pure CSS, because there are other hamburger menu that you need some JavaScript behind it for doing the animation and stuff. But the thing that I selected is just CSS and HTML, and that's it. And that makes the animation smooth and faster in modern browser, and that's it. So that was the main reason that we should consider why, or very careful about adding a new library in our application. Okay, with all of the reasons that I mentioned, I selected this link. It's a code pen, and whoever created it, I would appreciate it. This is from this link. I just want to tell you that I copied from this link. And as you can see, this is only HTML and CSS, and that's all. So what I did was just slightly modified the CSS code, and then I could not reuse the HTML part, but only the CSS part. So I copy paste exactly what we see here inside of my application, and I made it working. So I'll let you know how we can add it to our app. This is the app that we left last time. If you don't know how to create it, I highly suggest to go to the previous application, previous tutorial, and go to the GitHub in the description of the video, and you can find the source code. And once you have this, we will go from this to creating hamburger menu that we left from previous tutorial, and this is the structure that we left. So in order to make it a little bit organized, for each page I'm gonna define a new folder. So currently we have 2 pages, so I'll define about, and I specify I can just move this one to about. WebStorm is smart enough to refactor it basically and change the name. So if it's here, it changed the import here to about, as you can see. So if you do it manually, make sure that your imports are correct. And also I would do the same thing for homepage. I'll create a new folder and add the homepage inside of it. So I'll call it home, and then I move this home file here and refactor. So we'll add 2 folders. This way we can just add all of the stuff that relates to about page inside of this folder. For example, if we have some styles, so we can add it inside of here, or if we have some component that relates to an about page, so we can add it right underneath this folder. And also for test files, so if you have some unit test, you can add it here. This is more organized way for our application. So that's the first step. The next step that we want to take is going back and adding some styles and the menu. The structure of your application is something that you can decide how to organize, and that's the way that I organize. I prefer to add each component or pages underneath a folder, and the same thing here. Under the src or source file, I can add a shared component folder, and I add component, and I add all of the shared stuff inside of this component. And one of the shared stuff is the menu basically. So I can add a new folder here again and call it menu, and I add all of my files related to menu here. So what file we need? We basically need a menu.jsx. So let's add that file. Here it is. This is the test file, and this is currently empty file. So how do we fill it out? By now we should definitely know it, how to create a new component in React. So basically we first import React. I do this so you get familiar how you create component, and they call it functional component, but don't get confused by these words. And then later we will import other stuff, but for now, for just creating one component, we are fine. We call it a menu, and what it returns a function, and this is a signature for function here, ES6, and then we can export this. Export default, we want to have this file default return this menu. And what do we have in this menu? It should return some basically view, right? So we call it return, and for now this will be an empty parenthesis. So basically we will add our JSX code or the files that looks like HTML. Right. Add for our view, I would like to show you one more time again the source file that we want to copy, basically we need to have some div tags, and then we can have our menu element. So all I've done and what I will copy is this structure inside of our application, and then I will customize these menu items. So let's just keep it in mind that we will copy this part, and then we will add our custom menu items, and we will also copy all of the styling from this part. So let's go back and do that. So I'll copy paste the structure that we saw in that link, which is basically nothing very complicated. It has some divs and inputs that then it adds some style to it to look like the menu that you see on the screen. So it's nothing very complicated. Only the structure is something that they developed, and we can just reuse it easily for our purpose. And as you can see, the menu items, I put it blank items here. So we add our menu item. We have 2 pages, and we have home page and about page. So I'll add these 2 items here. I have not added yet here, but just first wanted you to get comfortable with the things that I copy from the other website. And as you can see, it has the menu, and it has some wrapper, the toggler. It adds some functionality based on the CSS when you click on it. So we don't need to know all of this stuff. We just have to copy paste the structure of the suggested menu. And what we need to add for our menu, I use React Router. So if you remember, we learned React Router in our one of previous tutorials. And one of the cool things that React Router has is the link. And I just copy paste it here, so I can just import it as well. So the way that you import is like this: import link from React Router DOM. And what it does is it will when you click on that link, it will take you to the URL that you give it to. So that's all it does. So we have homepage that the URL is slash, and that's why we have this like 2. So this link has a 2 property, and it will take you to that URL. So for about page, we do the same thing. It has 2 property, and then it takes you to about page /about. And if you see the class names, and these are just the styling part, I want to give these menu items some styles, so you'll see it later. Basically, you saw it in the demo at the beginning of the this tutorial. But for us to add some style for that buttons, I added this class name, and inside of my CSS file, I add some style to it. So now, where is our CSS file? We have not created yet. Basically, we have to add our CSS file inside of this menu file. So let's add it. Okay, by now you should know that how you can add a new style file. So style sheet, you can call it menu, and it will add it to our folder. So what do we add here? Basically, we copy paste whatever we had in that link. So I just copy paste whatever we saw in this source code. I modified it slightly for my own customization, the way that I want it to look like, but you can just copy it from the link that you see on top of this menu file. So there's some other stuff that you can customize. It's very obvious that which class name that you're customizing. For example, each item has a color black. If you want to make the font black, you can change it. If you want to make the color of the background a different color, currently it's orange, you can just change it, and a lot of things, because it is very good documented. So if you see, for example, it says the lines, that hamburger lines that we have, 3 lines on top of each other, so you can just modify based on your need. And then top and bottom, basically the top line of the hamburger menu and the bottom line of that burger menu, and everything else. So it's very obvious, and you can modify it based on your needs. And I highly suggest to just go ahead and modify some of this stuff and play with it and see how it gets different look on your application. But basically I just copy paste it. So you can do this copy paste and get the code from the GitHub, from the description of this link, and just modify it by yourself. So we can test it and see how it looks like. First we have to import it for sure. So import this CSS file that we just created, and now we should use it somewhere. So this menu, as you can see, is complaining that this menu is not being used anywhere. So where we can use it is basically in our homepage. So we have homepage here. If I click homepage, and we can just import it inside of our application. So called menu, and that's how we add it. So again, WebStorm is smart enough to import it automatically, but you have to, if you're doing it manually, you have to import your menu that you just created here and give it a path where it's located, and then you can use it here. So now let's test it and see how it works. If you see some of the codes that you see here, these are from the previous tutorials that we use for the navigation. Don't just get confused with that, but all we need to import our menu is just this line of code and have this import. So let's see how it works. Here is what we developed so far. So if I click on it, you'll see home and about page. So if I click on about page, it will go to the about page, and if I go back to the home page, I'll see the menu again. You don't see the menu on the about page because we just added only for the home page, and this is the customized menu that I added. These are the lines that I talked about in our styling part. This is the orange color that I mentioned that you can modify. You can modify the font and everything that you need. That's all for the first menu tab. Let's do the second menu tab. We need the same thing that we did for the menu, the first menu. So we need a new file. So this time I'll call it menu2 instead of menu, and basically we can copy paste the same thing. So I'll copy this and then create a new file here, and this is a JSX file. I call it menu2, and I basically paste whatever we had for menu 1, but I removed the stuff inside in order to create a new one. So where do we get the menu2? So basically this is the menu2 that we get the stuff. This is the URL for it, and this is how it looks like. So I'll get it from this source code. So if you see that I copy paste all of the HTML and the CSS file inside of our code. So let's go back to our code, and I will copy the stuff HTML with some modifications, because the menu items, we should add the menu items, and these menu items are the exact same thing that we added for menu. So if we go back to menu and open the links, so this is the link that we had, and it takes us to the link route and also the about route. So we have the same thing here. So until here, these parts were copied from the link, but this part is customized, and I added my own link items. So it will take us to the home page and about page. So then what we need is to create a CSS file for it, basically Sass file, and for this one we call it menu2 as CSS. So I can just basically copy this or create a new file, and this is Sass, and call it menu2. And what do we do here? We copy paste all of the styling parts of that link. And where do we have those styles? I can just grab it from the link and paste it here. So in order to have the source code I added on top of this file, this copied source code is you can download the link and the source code from the GitHub from the description of this video. So now we have to import this one. Since we copied from the other file, it was the menu, but we need to import the menu too. And also we have to use it, as you can see here, or this is called menu 2. We have to, because since we copy paste from menu, it was still called menu, but now it's menu 2. Now we need to use it somewhere, and the best way to use it is probably in the about page, because in home page we used our different styled menu, so we want to use the other menu type inside of our about page. So the way that we can use, like the other one, we can call it menu 2 and closing tag. So basically it should work if we don't miss anything. So we are on home page, we had that menu before, we go to the about page, now it looks different. See, this is the menu we just added, and if I go to home page, it goes back to the home page. So the links work as well as the menu. That's all for this tutorial. I think it might be helpful for adding a menu to your application. Link, subscribe, share if you like, and add your comments, what you want to see, what kind of menu that you're looking for, and if I can develop it for you, I will definitely create a tutorial for it.